Hello everyone and welcome back to the ROKER Report podcast, where I come bringing good news, something I don't feel like I've done in about 7 calendar years. Sunderland, as of recent, have got a respectable draw away to Fleetwood Town, who are in and around the promotion chase, and we have, as of yesterday, beaten Lincoln City 3-1 to move ourselves up to 9th and within 1 point of the playoffs. Such is the volatile nature of this year's League One. Only 2 decent results are getting us back in a place where we much prefer to being 13th. So let's just jump straight back into it. I am Alex, as always. Well, I say as always, I'm kind of in and out really, but I'm your host Alex, who's back on a sporadic basis. I am joined in the studio, first of all, by fellow ROKER reporter Mr. Craig Chapman. How you doing, Craig?
Very well. How are you?
I'm all right. Thanks for asking. How's life?
Taking over.
Yeah.
Winning games.
It's all right, isn't it?
2-3 or 4-17, but
yeah, it's all about perspective, isn't it? Really,
we're getting there slowly but surely.
If we sort of like narrow our scope, though, we're going to look at 2 and 3, and that looks quite nice.
Yeah, it's better than it was on Boxing Day.
It certainly is, and I'm also joined by Sam, also of the ROKER Report. How you doing, Sam?
I'm all right. How are you?
How am I? You know, again, I'll use that classic joke. I haven't changed in the last 5 seconds. I'm pretty good.
I don't feel he cared when he asked that.
No,
I don't think he did.
There was no effort in that.
It was very robotic. See, I mean, obviously this is an audio-based platform, but I looked at Craig, and you know, when he spoke with his eyes, and I could really see how much he cared. Whereas Sam didn't even look at me when he said that. Like, he was looking at his phone.
It was like Phil Parkinson's post-match interviews when he can't look at Oscar in the face, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sam was picking his shirt there.
Channeling Phil.
Oh, I'm all right. Yeah, how are you? That's you, Sam.
Yeah,
that's you.
That's how he sounds. That's how you sound.
I'm also joined by SAFC FanTV's Jacob Kirkbride. How you doing, Jacob?
I'm buzzing. Thanks. Still getting a good vibe off the very successful festive period that the team has had. Shame it's coming to an end right now because we've got a very difficult game at home next week against Wycombe. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm very well, thanks, especially after the game yesterday.
There's no reason not to be, given how things have gone. And when you take 7 points from 9, it's generally cause for, you know, just a bit of happiness, just a bit. We don't really ever allow ourselves too much as Sunderland fans, but in this case, I think we can give ourselves just this moment on this pod today. Let's start with the 3-word review. So, as always, we all know how this goes. We ask the good people of Twitter for a 3-word summary of the recent events in the life of a Sunderland fan. So, Anthony Waterston says 100 points. And then in brackets, we can only finish on 98 points mathematically now, so thanks for that, Ant. Carl M14 says, we've missed Gooch. Mrs. Thubbs says, we wanted 4. Sandancer 12 says, promotion push on. JM Hopper 10 says, lucky against rubbish. Bucky 1973 says, lucky to win. Can't pronounce this, gonna try. Velo Chef 6 says, flatter to deceive. June and Alan say, get off backs. Gavin Grady says, more like it. And James Turnbull says, fill Parkinson in. Let's start in, I suppose, because that win's fresh in our minds, we'll go in reverse chronological order. We're going to start by talking about the Lincoln game, where obviously we won 3-1. For those who were under a rock and sadly missed a rare spectacle of a Phil Parkinson Sunderland win, basically we started off fairly comfortably at home to Lincoln. We still looked like the capable attacking threat that played against Fleetwood and Doncaster. And our efforts were rewarded from a corner, which Flanagan nodded in to make it 1-0. Sunderland would then double and then subsequently triple the original lead, thanks to a fairly haphazard attempt at a clearance from the Lincoln City goalkeeper, in which the ball was kicked onto Chris Maguire's head, which then found Lyndon Gooch's head, which then found the net to make it 2-0. And from there, I don't believe too long afterward, we had a Route 1 ball over the top, and the Lincoln defenders tried to do something that resembled a clearance, but ultimately failed, allowing Lyndon Gooch, in all of his 5'8" glory, to run through on goal, shrugging off all 3 of the defenders, and finding the far right corner of the net with perfect precision to make it 3-0. The second half was fairly uneventful. Sunderland were quite flat in the 45 minutes, probably understandable given that they've played about, 7 times over the Christmas period, but we allowed Lincoln to get back into the game thanks to a dubious goal in which there was a potential foul and offside, but obviously we don't try to give too much of our attention to the officiating of League One to save our sanity. But ultimately that brought to 3-1, but that's how the game would end. Sunderland were comfortable winners in the end in a game where we always looked like the better team. Let's get into the actual discussion from our guests so I can stop talking. We'll start with you, Jacob. What did you make of the game?
I think it was a very controlled performance. I think the energy levels weren't quite there second half, but I think that's mainly because of tiredness coming off these run of like compact fixture lists we've had recently, which is the case for all teams over the Christmas period. But yeah, very solid win. It goes, obviously we were discussing before we went on air, when we win, it's 3 at the back with wing backs. When we lose, we've started with a 5 and then play very, was it compact with a long ball style for most of the game without really any effective midfield play. But I think in terms of our midfield play yesterday, George Dobson and Max Power linked up very well, and it feels like that's a solid backdrop to work on with these tough games we've got coming up at the moment.
Would you say there was a lot more of a presence in midfield? Because I think one of the criticisms I had against Fleetwood, while again I thought we were the dominant team, the midfield looked a little bit absent. So I think that kind of halted play a bit. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, just I felt like we didn't have enough urgency in that Fleetwood game to like really take the game to them in the final third, and like I think we needed a little bit more pace in the final third, which is why we brought Dunks on, which won the penalty in the end. That obviously got us the point, but looking back on it, we should have won that game really with the chances we had, and I think if we did, then we would be in the playoffs now, I believe, looking at the table.
Mathematically, yeah, I think we would have been. I think we would have nudged Peterborough out, or we would have nudged somebody out in the 6th. I forget who, but ultimately, yeah, you're right. We would be in there. Looking back at the Lincoln game, though, obviously it was a good performance, all things considered. You know, while the second half was a bit flat, it was overall a very solid professional display. Who were your standout performers?
George Dobson, I thought, knocked it about very well. I think when Max Power's next, I think it took a while for them to get their rhythm of play going when they were starting games together, but I think now it's starting to click very well. Luke O'Nine's energy levels at home against a team who are going to sit back a lot during the game is absolutely fantastic once again. And like down that right hand side, it's just a blessing at times. It's a shame that he couldn't get on the score sheet compared to that chance he missed against Fleetwood, which he should have been burying that really.
It was harder than missed, I think, than the score.
Yeah, that was absolutely terrible. But you can't fault his work ethic, Luke O'Nine, over the course of the season. He'll be someone we really need in like going into the latter stages of the campaign. Denver Hume on the left, very good once again, and Jordan Willis. I thought like whenever. I think because they brought on a big physical striker in John Akinde at half time, he coped with him very well.
Yeah, I think there was one moment as well, I think, when I think that Akinde was, and we're not through on goal per se, but he'd made a run down, they'd had a ball through, he was making a run down, there were about 20 yards between him and the goal, and Willis recovered brilliantly and got a foot in and halted the play entirely, and I think that was just a testament in one instance to how well Willis did play yesterday. Yeah. I think he's maybe an outside shout for man of the match from when I saw it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, I think we were, you look at like how he plays and like how much pace he has for a centre-back, we were very lucky to get him really on a free. I think like on his day, he could be championship level, like for a team, I would say like mid-table team in the championship, like potentially even better than that. I think he at Coventry had a few injury problems that let him down, but I think he's one of the key men we need to remain fit in our squad at the moment.
Do you think he's our best defender?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think when you've got him playing, we've got a far better chance of keeping a clean sheet. Obviously, it's a shame that we're not doing that at the moment, but I think it's just around the corner. And obviously, I felt with when Lynch is playing next to him, he looks an even better player than what he is, I think.
Lynch is a very assured presence, I think, with him.
Yeah, with like the physicality and experience Lynch has, and the pace that Jordan Willis has to like track down key like front men. I think the two like play very well. But also, speaking of our defenders, Flanagan, he got a goal for his Wards, and he did have a few misplaced passes yesterday, but overall it was a pretty solid performance from him as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. What do you two other boys think? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd pretty much agree with the entire sentiment, really. I think for me, one of the standouts was Jordan Willis. And again, just touching on what we said, he was very calm, he's very assured. And I don't think that's any coincidence, really, that, you know, when we really got going yesterday, everyone had that spring in the step. You know, they were chasing down the extra challenges. And just touching on the midfield, I think one of the criticisms, if you like, that we've had for quite a long time is we often get overrun. The small, not very athletic, if you like. I mean, they're all of the same ilk, really, the majority of our midfielders. But what was good yesterday, I thought, was, just that continuous pressing. And I think we frightened the life out of Lincoln when we got going, when we were chasing down every ball. And what was excellent, I think, in one particular moment, I'm not sure if you recall, everyone really had a good go at them. It was Dobson went to chase a ball down, Power did, Gooch did, everyone got stuck in. And then when we won the ball back and it was dead in play, everyone around each other applauding each other for the efforts. And you could really see a good synchronisation between them. Which I think it's good to see, because, like I said, in terms of our midfield of late, they've been sat deep, they've been very, very holding, just kind of continuously protecting that back line. So it was nice to see them take the shackles off a little bit. I've been one of Dobson's biggest critics.
Yeah.
It was one of his better games. I still expect to see an awful lot more, but I think going forward that is likely now going to be the definitive partnership, if you like, between him and Max Power, because I think now, knowing that we're so close to the promotion pack, if you like, we have to kind of keep this sort of momentum now. We can't go into games and say, look, we're going to change the way we're playing by, say, accommodating Ledbetter, someone who's then going to have to do a lot of his work. We really need to take the game to teams. So it was promising to see that yesterday. I thought Lyndon Gooch was absolutely fantastic. I thought he buckled in, he worked incredibly hard, and this is from somebody who's had a lengthy layoff. I thought he scored an excellent goal at Doncaster. He's been rewarded again for his efforts and his persistence for chasing things down yesterday. And again, it was a really all-round solid performance. I do think, in the second half, naturally, because of the amount of games that we have played, it is inevitable that the performance levels are going to somewhat drop. But I don't think Lincoln really threatened at all. I mean, I think if I remember rightly, they didn't really have a shot on target until maybe around the 60-minute mark. There was a period of maybe 5 minutes or so after they scored where they had the tails up, and you think, right, they're probably going to come at us. But even then, I thought they were terrible. Really.
They weren't clinical.
No, I think. And it's not to do any disservice to basically any of the players on the pitch yesterday. If we play a better class of opposition, the reality is we're probably going to be in for a tougher game, and that will reflect next week against Wycombe. So I don't want to get too carried away in terms of who we've beat. We still really haven't beat anyone above us. But nevertheless, it's a good win. It's an important win. We would have took 3-1 before. So we've really got to take more positives than negatives away from it.
Coming back to what you were saying there about putting the pressure on, which I think is an excellent point. It's something that was, I think, very much apparent when we got ahead against Lincoln, that we certainly didn't take our foot off the pedal at all. If anything, we slammed it down. You had your players like Maguire and Gooch on the pitch, who have always been, I think, our best pressers, and that was reflected very much so by forcing the air out of Lincoln for the second goal. Obviously, Maguire and Gooch chase them down, they make a mistake, the blunder, and then those two are there to capitalise. One thing I will say as well, though, I'll come back on this one, Craig. I thought the fans yesterday played to that immensely well. I think when Sunderland were on the offensive, I think the fans really got behind them. Do you think it's possible to say that a real asset to our promotion push this season would be the culmination of our players putting the pressure on by maybe playing a pressing game and forcing errors, and the fans really sort of like getting behind them and really baying for the blood to get the goal?
Definitely, yeah. I think in terms of some of the post-match comments I've seen yesterday, their manager said they just did not know what hit them. And they got into the dressing room at half-time and basically they couldn't kind of understand the collapse. Now, we've seen that a few times. We've seen it under Jack Ross, the Rochdale game last season, Barnsley, and Scunthorpe, I believe, as well. And it happened again with Tranmere and obviously yesterday as well. And it's no surprise, really. Look, I don't want to say that, it's always us responding or anything, because I thought the fans were excellent yesterday. And they have been all season. But what was good yesterday was, as like you said, it was that synchronisation, really. It was the case that we could see players digging in. And one of the old cliches that you always hear is, we'll celebrate a tackle like a goal. And Max Power yesterday, when he won the ball back from one particular instant, everyone roared to the feet. There was applause. And it was a real good kind of feel-good factor about the place. And, I mean, like I said, it'd be fair to kind of scream and shout at fans and say, you haven't done this. We have. We've done this like a large times throughout the course of games. I remember in particular the Burton game where, the fans were right behind them. and then players' performance levels dropped. So they didn't kind of marry up. They didn't match us in that level. And that's what all we ask for, really, is go out onto that pitch and basically deliver everything you can. And it was the same at Doncaster, and you will be rewarded for the support. The Doncaster fans said after that game that they'd never heard a noise like it in that away end. And that's what you come to expect with Sunderland fans. And again, it's a testament to everybody yesterday that we keep saying it. We're at the lowest position really in our history, fluctuating between where we are now to where we were last week. But one ever present has been the fans, and I think we've been absolutely magnificent.
Absolutely. Sam, we'll have some thoughts for you, then we'll move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main thing I took from the game, Craig touching up, was the pressing, and I think it's been evident in the last 3 games since the Bolton game, which I think we can all agree was just shocking, and it was a great way for them to come back. I particularly noticed it against Doncaster when we were just in people's faces, and it seems that in this league, teams don't really know how to cope with that, and we saw it in the second goal yesterday. You get in people's faces, and rather than them adjusting to it, they just kind of panic and sort of offer you the ball in a way, and I think it was good, and hopefully, well, that's obviously came from Parkinson, or came from the coaching staff, or came from the players itself, which is exactly what we needed to get the fans back on track. And like you were talking about there, usually when the fans are on point, the players respond to that and give a performance like yesterday, which is everything you want as a Sunderland fan, really. You want, even if it's not the most entertaining game, you just want 11 players on the pitch who are playing for the shirt and trying the hardest, and will respond to that, and hopefully it's good going forward. Obviously, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, as you were saying. It'll be interesting next week against Wycombe, but if we play with the same intensity and the same sort of desire, I don't see why we can't get something from the game, really. The fans will be well up for that next week.
Yeah. Are we putting, I mean, obviously not to be too negative after such a rare semblance of positivity, but while that was a very comfortable win in the end yesterday, they were significantly flatter in the second half. What are we putting that down to, do we think?
I think Jacob touched upon it earlier, is a lot of games in quick succession.
Yeah.
But it is something that we have seen quite regular in our time in League One. So, albeit I'll definitely agree with that. But look, we've got a fairly big squad. So Charlie White was, he was touch and go apparently with a throat infection, I think I heard.
Yeah, that's right.
As far as kickoff yesterday. So if it's the case that the game is, say, out of sight, which it really was after that 10-minute period, you could never see Lincoln coming back into that game. Maybe get a half time and take him off, because what I would be looking at yesterday is, I've mentioned quite a few times of late, is I think Mark McNulty's been quite effective when he's come on, and it's always been the last 5-10 minutes of games, and if you're chasing a game, it's going to be incredibly difficult, obviously, to get something, and I feel like he does need, obviously, more game time, because he's going to come on, he's going to look a bit rusty. Maybe even Will Grigg, dare I say. Is it a last chance saloon? If he is potentially going to go out on loan, we don't know. But I feel that we do have a big enough squad to make the early changes. I mean, again, I don't know where he is. I'm still tin hat on, a bit of a fan of Dylan McGeoch, so it perhaps would have been nice to see him involved over the Christmas period at some stage as well, because there's a lot of games, when you say have Lyndon Gucci nursing him back to full fitness, you don't want to basically see an unbelievable performance from him yesterday and then all of a sudden he burns himself out and then you go, right, shit, we're back to square one. Same with Demba Hume. We don't have any cover for him now, albeit Lawrence de Bock I don't think was cover for anybody. But we've got to be very, very kind of protective of the players unless we are going to be reinvesting in those key areas. So, yeah, while I do agree that I will allow the Christmas period to be a factor for that, I do think that we could have been a bit more kind of careful in team selections over the course of the past few games. And I think going forward as well, that we should perhaps try and utilise the squad a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky one because there are probably maybe two. It's probably quite a polarising opinion, I would imagine, among the fan base, where obviously most of us can probably see that we've played a lot of games over Christmas, and as a consequence, then naturally the lads are going to be they're going to be fatigued. That's just a thing that's going to happen. But then I think what's the difficulty is, I think while some of us would have liked us possibly to really go for the jugular on Lincoln and maybe let's make this entertaining. We've just put 3 past them in quick succession. That obviously they're looking quite frightened. Let's try and get 3 more in the second half. Whereas some of us would probably think, actually, we've got some big games coming up. maybe let's sort of bank what we've got here and let's take off some of the players who are getting knackered. Because like what you said there, Craig, we've got players like Hume and Gooch and Wyke even. Let's say if Denver Hume and Lyndon Gooch pick up an injury, we are looking significantly weaker going into whatever the next game is. There are players in that team, while, obviously they're very good, but I think we lack adequate cover for a lot of them. That's my only fear.
One of the interesting comments is, again, kind of like you mentioned about the whole take the foot off the gas thing, and that was one of the criticisms that Jack Ross got at the start of the season an awful lot. He got that at Accrington, and it was a question about players' fitness. Now, I've noted a lot of people yesterday said that they look an awful lot fitter with a spring in the step. Now, I don't know, do other teams have the same concerns, if you like, that potentially they can't get through, say, 2 to 3 games in a week? Because as we stand now, look, the Christmas period is always a very, very busy period for football, but between now and May, we're pretty much going to be in a Saturday, Tuesday rhythm. Sometimes even, obviously, Doncaster on the Friday night, so it's going to be there or thereabouts for 2 games a week between now and the next 4.5, 5 months. So, I do think that obviously we are going to have to ensure that the players that aren't getting their game time at the moment, they need to be fit. They need to have that match fitness. They need to have that sharpness, because it's like you said, we take Lyndon Gooch out, we take Denver Hume out. We don't really have anybody adequate to bring in. Conor McLaughlin, albeit I think is absolutely shocking. If we need to call him into the squad, he hasn't really had an awful lot of game time, and he's going to look rusty and he's going to look worse than what he has already. So I think we need to ensure that perhaps even if these lads aren't getting game time in the first team, maybe even look to give them a little run out in the 23s. That'll not do them any harm. It'll not do them any dent to the confidence if perhaps say McNulty or Grigg can get half an hour in a 23s game, maybe score some goals and hopefully try and restake their claim in the first team, because so like you said, we'll lose Charlie Wyke. That's kind of Phil Parkinson's plan, really, isn't it? He doesn't really have anybody else to play that game. So
no, so obviously failing any adequate signing in January,
or we're up the creek without a paddle if one of them gets injured.
Yeah, I think so. And as we've both said there, that extends to various areas of the pitch. Anyway, one thing that's interesting to talk about, though, and again, I'm trying not to sort of like stay negative here, but if we're going to look constructively and realistically towards the Wycombe game, as it stands, Wycombe are top of League One, and we play them at home next week, which is obviously a crucial game in our promotion push. Now, we've played Lincoln and we've beat them 3-1, but Lincoln is 16th, and as Craig said earlier, we haven't really gotten any good results against teams above us. And when we played Fleetwood, again, that's a team who were and still are above us, and we managed a 1-1 draw in a game which was quite frustrating because we looked like the better team, but we couldn't capitalise. Looking at the Fleetwood game now, are there any concerns, lads, looking at that game that could transfer over to the Wycombe game?
Just, I would say, improvement on finishing, really. I think because obviously Wycombe are going to have a completely different style of play to what Lincoln showed yesterday. I would say they're going to be more physical with the players they've got, especially with someone like Akinfenwa up front as well. There will be a lot of long balls, so we may need to change our game slightly to adapt to that and potentially because I think the last few games we've played a lot of counter-attacking style and midfield work. I think in that Wycombe game we may need to get a lot more crosses into the box to potentially for Charlie to get his head up, because it'll be one of those type of games where we will need Charlie to be at his best, I think, because it suits the football will suit him, if you know what I mean.
Is there not a concern with Sunderland when we play, let's call them the better teams in this league, which evidently looking at the Fleetwood game isn't saying an awful lot, but is there not maybe a concern that we aren't a particularly tricky team to defend against, given that we're quite predictable with what we do? Because I feel like in the Fleetwood game, a lot of the offensives came from let's knock a couple of nice passes around, put a good move together and then hit an early cross into Wyke, but then Wyke would have 3 defenders on him, so it's just a case of head it away, and then if it falls to our defender, clear it, and then that's sort of, threat number 7 of 25 done for Sunderland today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also another thing to touch on, I think when opposition has a set piece against us, we just look very nervy, trying to defend them, and I think that's what Wycombe will want to thrive on next week, because when we played them down there, I was at the game, every set piece they had, it looked like they were going to score, and they ended up getting a reward from one of them. They put one in the opening 20 minutes, which was the only goal of the game.
Wycombe, I think, looking at them, aren't a very dynamic team. They, for me, and I mean, while I don't profess to watch them week in, week out, when I have seen them over the course of the past 2 years, I find them to be very one-dimensional. I think they they're a big physical team, and they use things like set pieces. They use the sort of the sheer presence of them to really sort of like shoulder barge their way to victories. And we saw it like as when we played them down there. I think one of their players said, "You come to our house, you play our rules." That's how they. That's Gareth Ainsworth's Wycombe's culture. Is we play a rough physical game. We use quite routine ways of getting goals, and it undid us, if that's even a word. We were undone by that when we went down there.
I think, because we were linked with Gareth Ainsworth when Ross got the sack, wasn't it? Yeah. So I think because when we brought Parkinson in, I think what the people at the top were looking at was a manager that could bring in a style of football that can adapt well to this league and still get results, which under Ross at times it was good to watch, but we weren't like grinding out that result that we really needed.
And we also weren't sure of what actually our style of play was. That, especially towards the end, a lot of us were thinking, I'm not entirely sure what Ross wants us to do here. And I think the Ainsworth appointment was quite a seductive one because you knew what you were getting. It was like sort of Ainsworth's style of play was rubber stamped on the label. It was he would do what he said on the tin, and I think that was.
I think the main reason we didn't go for him was just purely because his lack of experience when it came to promotion, which Parkinson did have at the end.
I think he instills a lot of confidence in that side as well. And I remember one of the things from last season. It was commented to say that they got the opportunity to walk in like a side door at the Stadium of Light, and he basically told his players, he said, "No, we go in the front door. We're not, lesser than these. We're on an even keel," and you could just see that there was an awful lot of positivity. And I think, for example, yesterday Lincoln were like rabbit in the headlights when we put them to the sword for that 10 minutes. They just could not cope, and they got frightened, and the crowd got obviously unnerved them, if you like. That didn't quite happen when Wycombe came here last season, and it was, to be honest, I mean, I think every game we've had against them have been awful games of football, really, because they play in a particular way. They're there to irritate you, frustrate you, and you can see a lot of our players did get bullied. They were getting unnecessary yellow cards. So it wouldn't surprise me next week to perhaps see Grant Ledbetter get involved again for maybe like a more experienced head. Maybe somebody who will sit alongside Power and Dobson, whether that's perhaps the way it would go, because it wouldn't surprise me to see them come up here again and be back to the usual tricks of the physicality and get under our skin, because as good as the crowd are, if something goes against us, we can obviously have a bit of a moan and things like that, and not necessarily at our players, of course, but that can perhaps translate into the players think, "No, Christ, do you know what I mean? We're really going to have to try and get back to it now." But yeah, for me, it like I said, I think we've been vulnerable an awful lot against them, and Jacob alluded to the set pieces. So what I would like to see necessarily next week is take more of our chances, just be a bit more adventurous. You seen Power yesterday. We know that he can basically smash a ball from much any distance, and he brays one against the crossbar from 25 yards out. Why aren't you doing that more often? And if you're doing that when you say 2-3-0 up and one goes 30 yards over the bar, who cares? Because at least you go, right, we're trying different things. I mean, tin hat on, I think this is the sort of game where you'd have Aidan McGeady involved as well. That's a conversation for another day. But again, I would like to see, say, maybe Chris Maguire replicate yesterday's performance into next week as well. Get at them, get under their skin, do something like what we've done against Portsmouth in the first leg of the playoffs. Because player for player, we're better than Wycombe.
Absolutely. On paper, they're not a good team, but
they've got a job. They stick to it, and it's important that we basically stick to ours. I think it's going to be an ugly game of football. We'll all be prepared for that, of course. But yeah, look, we've got nothing to be fearful for, and that is coming from me. And like I said, I'm not Phil Parkinson's biggest fan, but I think if we set the team up like he has, there's no reason why, with the players playing the way they are at the moment, that we can't take maximum points. And if we do, then it's going to send out a statement, because like we've all discussed, besides, say, Portsmouth at the start of the season and the draw away at Ipswich and maybe at home to Oxford, we haven't really done anything of note against a team to frighten them. I overheard a couple of comments yesterday from Lincoln fans walking towards the ground going, "Oh, well, we should be winning against teams like Sunderland." And I'm thinking, sorry, what? No disrespect, but like, we're Sunderland. We should be beating basically any team like you who's comfortable. This is your cup final. So
as evidenced by the 5,000 fans.
Yeah.
And obviously by the nice day out, and well, they couldn't even get the Netflix song right, could they? But listen, that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, I think it's going to be an incredibly frustrating, ugly game of football. But we'll stick to our plan, and I'm more than confident we'll take maximum points.
I think we'll move on to the questions now, but as one final point on that, I think this is a game where we as fans, I think, should really do our bit to get behind the team, because it's something we've spoken about there. Gareth Ainsworth's team is not built on the individual talent of his players. Craig said there, and he's totally right, player for player, we are significantly better than Wycombe Wanderers are. However, they've structured their entire sort of ethos and identity around being aggressive, being, you might say arrogant, but in a way that's very effective. That's no disrespect to them necessarily, because I think what they're doing very well.
If it works, it works.
If it works, it works. Yeah, I mean, he's not breaking any laws. He's making a team that's very aggressive, very sort of like very self-righteous, very confident.
It's not too dissimilar of Wimbledon in the 90s.
No, it's not.
I mean, crazy going.
Yeah, even when people turn their nose up at, say, perhaps Stoke, maybe 10 years ago, that they were scoring a lot of goals from throw-ins, so be it.
But it was working.
It was working. So, I mean, if we score ugly goals like we did yesterday, we pressed, and that second goal was an absolute disgrace of defending. But if it crosses the line, you don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think what we need is if our players like Gooch and Maguire are playing the aggressive style of football, they're playing against Lincoln, forcing mistakes out of defenders. Maybe you've got Power and Ledbetter having shots from range, things that are going to galvanise the fans. Yeah. That is going to go a long way, I think.
Get up.
If their sort of identity is built around their sheer personality, then we need ours to be louder.
Yeah.
Because if we can get them on that front and on talent, then we've got them and we've got maximum points.
Do you feel that some of our players maybe had like a little bit of an arrogance about them again yesterday? You could.
I think Maguire, with respect, always does, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
No. I was going to say not necessarily in a negative way, but I mean when you went 3-0 up, you seen them sort of having a bit of a laugh and a joke, and you could basically see that it was kind of, we're not where we are, admittedly. We were in and around the playoffs, and we're close enough now, but it was good to basically see them kind of enjoy themselves again, because you've watched them walk off the pitch a good few times with the head down and think, and who knows what they think, but they've looked miserable as sin.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see them get the rewards yesterday, and I honestly would like them to now look at next week and go, you know what, let's do that again. It's a big game.
Absolutely. Anyway, on our questions, so we asked some of the people of social media for some questions for us and some talking points for today. We'll start with this one from Panhead1973, who says, voice of the fans who start a campaign without knowing the fans' opinions, rubbish media. Let's start with you here, Sam.
I think we were talking about this earlier. I don't think we've ever claimed to be the voice of all fans. What people sometimes don't understand is there's just difference of opinion in everything. I mean, I go to the match with 5 friends and we can all sit in the pub and have an argument where we all won't agree, but then we'll go to the match together and we all watch the same match. I think it's just realising that people can stand up for something if they believe in it, and it shouldn't, even if I don't agree with it or you don't agree with it, it doesn't mean we should turn our nose about it. You can have your opinion, you can have a conversation about it, but I think it was nice to just see the fans, and I don't want to misuse the fans again, but sort of get together and do something what they felt was right. But all in all, I just think go to the match and have your opinion, really.
Yeah, I think the most crucial point to take away from that is voice of the fans, I would say respectfully, is not what we are, and that's a misinterpretation and misunderstanding of what ROKER Report represent and the ROKER Report represent. Ultimately in this room there are 4 Sunderland fans who are giving their opinions, and I think it's often the case with football. If you have 4 fans in a room, you get 8 opinions, and all of which are different.
100%.
And that's the case. At no point do we ever claim to speak on behalf of all of the fans. No. So if you feel that we are, then obviously I apologise for the misconception, but we certainly aren't, and don't ever feel that just because there's a campaign, quote unquote, on our, say, Twitter account that you are sort of drafted into it, because certainly you aren't. This is just one source of opinion on SAFC, but it in no way represents all of the rest of the Sunderland fan base. Anyway, we'll move on to the next one, which is from Ryan Haddock, who says, do you believe getting rid of McGeady could be a huge turning point for our season? So far, results haven't been bad and unbeaten without him. We'll go to you, Jacob. What do you make of that?
It's a strange one, to be honest. I mean, there was a lot of debate going around at the match yesterday. Like, we've gotten a few bad eggs out the dressing room, and it's created a reaction. They purely think it's because of that, or it could be the fact that there's been a whole load of negativity going on around the club recently, where I think what the manager's done with the players is, listen, because of all this negativity, you can go down, like get your head down and play with just a little bit more freedom and just forget about it. And it seems to have clicked.
Yeah. Do you think there was possibly like an over-reliance on McGeady?
Yeah, I think with obviously, because we don't know the full story, we're not in the position to comment, but I feel like obviously I don't think Parkinson purely wanted him out the club. I think he potentially tried his best to like get him on board with the ideas he wanted to bring. It hasn't worked with him, but I think with because I think with the whole story, was it Chris Maguire was involved in it as well?
Yeah,
Something to do. Yeah. I think it's had a positive effect on Maguire, but not so McGeady. But if that's the case, what can you do? We just simply have to move on from it.
Was there perhaps, maybe this is my tin hat on, is there an argument to be made that this whole fiasco comes at quite a convenient time for us because McGeady was on the decline?
Yes. One of the points that I put forward, and again, it's all about opinions, and like Jacob is 100% correct. We don't know the specifics on it. It was a bit of a weird timing that it all kind of came to fruition, if you like, that he'd had the McDonald's incident, which we're not going to get involved in because it seemed to break the internet. But the general take of it is McGeady was unhappy that we'd went away to Gillingham, and we had him, Maguire, and Duncan Watmore on the bench. Again, I think that was another one where we barely registered a shot on goal. I know the time down there prior that we didn't, but I think that he's got a bit of a belief about him to say, like, look, we're Sunderland Football Club, we shouldn't perhaps be going away to teams like Gillingham and setting up for a draw, or to make sure we don't concede, we should be taking the game to them. So I think he has that belief in his own abilities. I personally think, and again, it's just an opinion, nothing factual, and I don't want a solicitor's letter through the door. The reason I think he's basically been forced out is financial reasons. I really do. I think that, well, we're well aware that he's one of the highest earners at the club. That's no surprise. That's no shock. But things have been mentioned in the past to say, he's a good player. He's really enjoying his time at Sunderland. He had interest in the summer, but he stayed for Jack Ross. He wanted to play under Jack Ross, and I think, he's been aggravated that Ross has lost his job. You could see a few of them looked a little bit dismayed. Maybe they didn't agree with the appointment of Parkinson. And, he's took a huff. So, yes, I agree. Perhaps he's maybe not as effective as he was last season, but he hasn't really had that game time. He hasn't had the opportunity to come in and change games. But do I agree that he's a bad apple? No, because this is the same player that, if you look back 6.5, 7, 8 months ago, whatever it was, he took us to Wembley. He scored 2 goals. The following couple of days later, he then breaks his foot in action against Accrington, and he was getting injections to carry us forward to our promotion push. So I personally think it's his desire to be involved at all times. Yeah, I agree there is an over reliance on him because everybody always wants to get the ball to McGeady and see what he can do because he's one of the better players in the league, of course. But I think there's more to it. I think it's a convenient thing for rumours to get out and say that he's bullying, allegedly again. He's bullying players. He's bullying younger players. But why would he have him training with the under-23s if that was the case? Yeah. It's a bit of a weird thing,
that's
is it
a
not?
good point. I think while obviously there's a lot of background politics obviously going on behind this whole McGeady fiasco, and obviously we don't know a lot of the facts, but we can certainly speculate and we can infer. Yeah, and some things don't add up.
The running of the football club, really, if you think about it, they're employees. It's no different to anybody working for Mazda or Tesco. If somebody's doing something behind the scenes, there is obviously a discretionary process. If somebody's getting done for, say, misconduct, gross misconduct, whatever, we're never, ever going to know for data protection reasons and obviously for every discretionary reason under the book. But I think to kind of turn around in the way it was presented to say he's not in our plans was a bit of a strange one because, we'd literally renewed his contract in the summer to basically give him the extra year, and then all of a sudden they have that U-turn to go, no, we're going to let him go. He's now linked with championship teams, so realistically, you're looking at it, he's going to get a better move. I know he wants to stay in the northeast, but even if it was the case that came out to us and said, look, we can't afford him or anything like that, or it's a similar position to last year, because we're a League One team now with League One finances, etc. If an offer comes in and it's too good for us to turn down, we're going to have to let players go. That's fine. We understand that. But would you not have had him involved in the last few games also? I know it obviously the question comes from winning 2 and 3, but you look at that Bolton game, for example, and that was terrible. If we had a game changer on the bench like him, he could have come on and look, speculating to say we would have won it, but maybe again at Fleetwood as well. If that chance which felt row 9, if that comes to him, he scores them.
Of course. Absolutely.
I mean, I might think like in the build up to that Bolton game, he was training in the days to that, but I think something sparked off that he was taken out of the squad completely from Parkinson.
Yeah, something happened. Certainly,
something's happened, and like I said, to be fair, the only way we're probably ever going to find out is maybe Netflix season 3.
Yeah,
because they seem to know. Yeah, it's one of those where we'll not tell you anything, but we'll sell our soul to Netflix, and they can reveal all. But
yeah,
I'd be interested to hear what he says when he does leave the club, because he'll probably not hold back. We know he's that type of character. If he feels aggravated or annoyed about something, he will say it.
I think one thing that's always sticks in my mind with the McGeady thing, I think you touched on it there, Craig, is timing. And what I felt was, obviously we're just speculating, we don't know the ins and outs, but I thought it was reasonably convenient when sort of fans were turning on Parkinson, saying he's got the same group of players, how have the levels dropped this much? It was quite convenient for him to turn around and say, oh, well, look what I've been dealing with in the dressing room. Obviously, to be fair, we have sort of seen better results, but I don't know. When you don't know the ins and outs, your mind wanders, but I've always thought it was quite convenient how many fans sort of quickly from going, Parkinson's done terribly since he's came into, well, you don't know what he's been dealing with. He's clearly had further problems. McGeady won't play since we've got rid of Jack Ross. You're never going to know, but that'll always stick in my mind until we know the full story, really.
Probably a good time to move on to our third question here, which comes from Ross Dobson, who says, are we now optimistic? Do we have faith in Parkinson's abilities after 5 games unbeaten and a good performance?
Judge after the transfer window, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's a fair rationale, but why do you think that, Jacob?
I just think like it's all, when you're a manager in this league, it's all depends on what sort of like business you can get in. Like obviously you need the people at the top to like help you out with this as well, but it's all about not necessarily having like finding the right quality. Just in League One, it's about the right player for the right time, because players come and go from teams in this league. Like a player that is purely can have the ability to galvanise the team, can have an effect on the team, I should say, to win promotion. That's what it is. I wouldn't say it's looking at signings for long term, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there were teams recently who have been promoted with signings who don't appear to be cutting it in the Championship, or have just gone immediately elsewhere. So I don't think there are many of us in the fan base now who would turn their noses up at a short-term solution should it get us promotion. But I think one concern, and it comes back to what we spoke about earlier, that there are players in the team who I think, if they were to be injured, that would seriously jeopardise some of the run-ins until they recover, the likes of Denver Hume, Lyndon Gooch, even Charlie Wyke, who's the only striker in the mould that Parkinson really wants, as it would seem. Let's say that hypothetically 3 of those picked up a knock in training and that put them out for a fortnight. If you had Wycombe and then Portsmouth the week after, that's tricky, because suddenly you look significantly weak at Denver Hume. For me, he's been a revelation this season. He had a bit of a slow start. He had a bit of a tricky time settling in the first couple of games, but once he got going, he's looked really good. Arguably our most creative player coming down the wing, in the absence of Aidan McGeady, certainly. Lyndon Gooch, again, his energy and his finishing has been instrumental to the past 3 games. Those 2 go, and then suddenly I think it's looking a bit more precarious, and suddenly you might... 2 wins or draws may become 2 losses, you could even say, given how things have gone.
With Denver Hume especially, you feel like he's played so well these last few games. Like because I always said he was better playing in a flat back 4. I didn't think he had the ability to play in like a wing back role just yet. But I think we've had no choice but to do that to get results because of like the energy he brings to the team. But it's a case of like, will he be able to do that on a success, like for a long period of time? If you know what I mean. And I feel like because of like this is his first full season in the first team, you think could there be like an injury coming? If you know what I mean, like we may need some cover in that area. But right now, like he is one of the first you'd want on the team sheet. Then, Hugh.
Yeah, definitely. I do look at him now and think, if you get injured, a little bit worried about what's going to happen in your absence. And I think
cover definitely.
Yeah,
I think
it's
the whole
quite
system would have to change, to be honest. I couldn't see anyone. I think the best thing you could hope for is maybe even like McLaughlin left wing back or O'Neill left wing back. I can't see it'll totally change how we play, because I think Jacob said there, I was of the opinion Hume's rocky start was because he wasn't not good enough to play in a wing back, but it was a different role he'd been asked to play, and he looked more solid in a 4. But now he seems like especially out wide because I know Gooch and Maguire sort of played either side of White, but they're more inside at the minute. I think out wide he's our biggest outlet at the minute. So if we were to lose Hume, I don't really know what we'd do in terms of his pace and ability out wide and just directness.
No.
And with the eye, I know he's a bit shaky defensively, but he's still got that instinct of I'm a left back rather than just shoveling winger, because we used to see it when Gooch did all right at wing back, but then when he was asked to drop in and when we were under the cosh, you could see he wasn't really used to it that much.
You notice now also with when a winger beats Hume, you see Willis like instantly sprint into the left to help him out, and it's good like combination play. But I feel, obviously touching on what he was saying there, I just feel if he gets it, we may need to like change the system completely.
It's definitely a concern, and I think again, and obviously since we're having a spell of optimism, we will call it the 3-5-2, not the 5-3-2. But but I think that's what it was designed to work under Ross, and while Ross didn't perfect it, Parkinson seems to be getting there.
Yeah,
again,
that's true.
Obviously if this keeps up, I mean, I was one of his biggest critics. Parkinson still not convinced, but I would happily eat humble pie if he started to generate consistent good results like this. More than happy to.
Sorry for cutting you off, but just going back to that question, I mean, rightly, like you said, obviously better results now, 2 wins and 3. How are you viewing, the kind of time in charge now? Are you looking at games, for example, you had people coming out yesterday with a spring in the step. It's always nice to win. They're going to 2 and 3, but do you think people are now not looking at the overall picture to go, it's 4 and 17. For example, if it's the case that we don't beat, say, Wycombe next week, are people going to be doing a U-turn and then basically going, because it's been a funny one on social media, for example, and I'm sure with FanTV you've got the same notifications that we have. They'll basically get the Parkinson out, and that's what we got at Bolton in the ground. Everyone was Parkinson out, get Phillips in. And I asked this at the very start of the season when we're discussing Jack Ross. I personally don't think that Phil Parkinson will get sacked, but is it going to be one of those where he's always 90 minutes away from the fans sort of changing their mind? I'll say at this stage, I don't want Phil Parkinson in charge of the football club. If we get promoted, even then still, I think that we have to look for something a little bit different. We have to now look at, say, setting out and having a particular mould, a particular way of thinking and sticking to it for a good few years. I don't think Parkinson's that man, and that's just my personal opinion, but I suppose the question is, if we say have a bad result against Wycombe next week, they come up here, they frustrate us, they score, and we maybe nick an equaliser later on, do people then U-turn against them again and go, right, actually, it's shite again?
I think it's always quite a volatile thing in football, the nature of managers. I think, especially in the context of Sunderland, it's quite a difficult situation, because obviously, what have Sunderland fans known? What have we known over the past 5 years other than failure? Very little, let's be perfectly honest. So I think what tends to happen is if managers start to lose games, there is a feeling of, here we go again.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, let's be honest here, the results prior to this recent run have been turgid. There have been some absolutely crap results that Parkinson's got. So I think the fans have every right to have wanted him out. If he's starting to get results again, and I think a lot of us now are holding our breath thinking, actually, hang on, maybe he's going to get it right. Possibly, maybe, but then obviously if we do lose to, let's say, hypothetically, touch wood, this does not happen. Let's say you lost 3-0 to Wycombe and you put in a terrible display and you get totally bullied. Suddenly the fans would be starting to think, right, maybe this guy's in the blow again. Maybe, because like X, Y, and Z won't be right in that game. And fans will think, right, why has he not addressed these? Equally, though, if we went and won 3-0 because we got X, Y, and Z right, we'll be thinking, right, Parkinson's on the up and up.
He's improving. But I think one of the difficult things, if you like, is obviously at the start of the season, it was never ever helped by Stuart and Charlie opening their mouths and going 100 points. We're going to be keeping hold of everyone and then subsequently selling everyone. And obviously we've got the McLaughlin fiasco now. He's been offered a contract. He said Thursday of last week, no, I haven't. Do you think, have we dropped our standards that low? Have we reduced them that much? Because when Jack Ross was in charge here and we got beat at Lincoln, and it was a terrible display. We were sixth. We'd lost 2 in 11 games. We'd knocked 2 Premier League teams out the cup. But at that stage, Stuart Donald came out and said, I'm letting him go for underlying performance data because on the basis of where we are now, I think that we're going to finish 8th. And that's what they stuck to. And they never ever, published, as far as I'm aware, they never discussed with the Red and White Army in one of those meetings either to say this is what we've, kind of based our stats and facts on, if you like. But when Phil Parkinson came in, he said, it's my job now to get the additional 10 to 15%. My remit's promotion. And Stuart said, playoffs is not acceptable. We're automatic promotion. Now, he was on Total Sport, obviously, the other night, and he basically said, if we get January right, and if we get a couple of results positive our way, the whole kind of games in hand, malarkey, we have a chance of getting in the playoffs. So the promotion word is being very, very kind of phased out, if you like, and he's only just mentioned playoffs. Is it the case that we should now, where we are, basically 9th, I believe, kind of re-increase our expectations to go, this league is absolutely horrendous. The team, everyone's beating each other. We've had the worst 3 months in the club's history and we're only a couple of points off now. So is it the case that we go, actually, look, anything less than say, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to say that we can get in automatic promotion. We just need to beat those teams and we'll get back up. So is it fair to say, if we don't get in the playoffs, minimum, that, he's basically, the whole season is a failure? Because I think we need to start mentioning that promotion word again.
I think what I would say, if it was possibly I would say if this was maybe 3 out of 4 seasons rather in the league, and we were sat in 13th, and then we'd maybe sort of like shoulder barged our way back up to 9th. I think actually no, automatics can't do that now. We're way too far away. We've lost too much ground. We're not going to recover it. However, you look at this League One table, and I implore any fan now just to pull your phone out and just Google it and have a look at it, because it's really, really tight. There were 12. I know that's a fairly big number in football terms, but there were 12 points between us and first. But given we were like 15th about a fortnight ago, so and you play the team who are first and who have been losing quite a lot recently next week. So if you win that game, then you're going to close the gap even further. Results go your way, you're 6th. You beat MK Dons away, who aren't very good. Then suddenly you're going to capitalise on that. And if you weren't in the playoffs before, you probably are now. If you were there already, you keep moving up. You win your 3rd game. Where are you? Almost. If not, you're probably 3rd, 4th. I don't know the maths. I've not got the table handy. But you would get very, very close to the automatics. And all it takes is a good run. And we saw Ross put together good runs with a team that had its fundamental flaws. And this is a league where it appears that the best teams are worse than the best teams of last year.
Definitely.
So is it possible to get promoted in the automatics? Of course it is. It absolutely is. There is potential in our team. And should we capitalise on that in the January window, I think there is every reason to assume. Let's go back to the original question, though. Again, I can bring that back round to answer that.
It was about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Am I optimistic based on what you've said there, Craig? I would say yes, but I'm also a bit concerned. There's still worries in the back of my mind. Am I worried that Parkinson's still not the man for the job? I am becoming convinced by recent results, because he's playing a system that we all thought irredeemable for our team, but he appears to be making it work. The Hume and Willis dynamic, Hume getting forward, Willis covering, that's worked brilliantly. Like Jacob said, I fully agree. I think we're looking a lot more clinical. We're taking our chances. We're bullying teams. We're being a bit less polite, a bit more aggressive. I think Parkinson's getting a lot of things right. I think there's work to do a bit still, but if he gets the right people in, then I think there's a very good chance we will get promoted.
So that's the next question, really. What sort of confidence do you have that the recruitment team will sufficiently support him this month? Because one thing we've always said is the January window is the big window, isn't it? And last year we lose Josh Madger, and look, we were all happy with Will Grigg when he was brought in at the time. He's been an absolute disaster. So if you look at it, how confident are you that whether it's Tony Courton or Richard Hill or one of these other scouts that we apparently have, but it doesn't seem that we have, whatever, how much confidence do you actually have now to say, right, okay, we're going to bring in the adequate signings, because we're a week in to January haven't really been linked with many, if any. And the ones that we have, it was a kid from Bristol who played in League Two for Newport, scored 3 in 21. It's kind of got the hallmarks of a Kaz Sterling or a De Bock, for example. And you think we've all mentioned, every single one of us now, to say we need strength and depth. We're looking at fullbacks. We're looking at somebody who can perhaps come in and maybe take the place of Charlie Wyke if he's not fit, because it looks like Grigg and McNulty don't fit the game plan. Like a Glenn Murray figure, and obviously I know he's not going to come to Sunderland, but it'd be nice to think. So do we have any faith in the people behind the scenes that they're going to do the job? Because for me, we've had 3 really bad windows. Do we think they're going to do it?
Well, I don't know who's running the club on a day-to-day basis. So a part of me,
Well, I was going to say,
is a little bit worried based on that, because that, I mean, like, this is speculation born from worry and fear, but I don't really know who is taking control of this in the main. I don't know who's performing the CEO role currently. So what I'm scared of is, are the recruitment team going to have explicit orders to go and get players X, Y, and Z, or are they just going to look around and find us a Kaz Sterling and a De Bock? Because, there's a very fine line between strength and depth,
yeah,
to put it bluntly, and I think that's my worry. If we don't get the players that we need, and again we come back to this, but if you players that are good and are doing well are getting injured, then let's look at the past 3 games. Okay, you take Gooch, you take Hume, you take Maguire out the equation. Are you going to win those last 3 games we've just played?
no.
No.
Would you? How many points from 9 would you get? Would you think, lads?
I probably think it would have been a draw yesterday. I think because I mean, I've been one of the biggest critics about the shape and the formation, but it's like you said, it was more like a fluid 3 when we're getting at them and pushing them into corners. So if you don't have that particular game plan, and let's say we had, I don't know, Grigg up front, who doesn't really seem to do that level of chasing or pressing, he runs around a bit, we probably would have got a draw. I don't think we would have betted our result at Fleetwood. Obviously, it was only a draw anyway.
Would have conceded late at Donny, I reckon.
Yeah, they applied a lot of pressure, didn't they?
Yeah.
And again, even for the large parts, you go.
Gooch's goal was a moment of brilliance.
It was just individual sort of Aidan McGeady levels.
Yeah, well, that's it. You take Gooch out, obviously McGeady's already out because of goodness knows what.
Well, look at the
Got
first
no
goal.
one who can do that, really.
Look at the first goal. The second goal, should I say? Sorry, Chris Maguire's goal. It all came from Denver Hume and Lyndon Gooch for hard work down that side. So
a lot of players in League One don't really have that cutting edge at that stage of the game.
I think that's important. I mean, we can talk about while it's working for Wycombe, you can have as much sort of well drilled squad and everyone doing the jobs, but you do need in football just that player who can flip a switch, and especially in a level like this. I mean, we've seen, like we was hinting there about Gooch and Hume running at defenders. They seem to panic, and we can get goals out of that. And we're seeing it all last year with McGeady, where we could. And Craig touched on it earlier. Somewhere like the Bolton game, that is just poor and nothing's going on. McGeady could get the ball and score a 30-yard screamer after taking on 3 people. And I'm not saying Gooch is at the same level, but we saw at Doncaster, he can get the ball, there's nothing on, and scores a screamer, scores a good goal yesterday. And I think we need to be very careful, going back to the question about January, if we're going off, and Craig said the last windows, I don't think we've ever really improved from a window under Stewart, and particularly in League One. And in many ways, I think we've gone backwards. We were very unlucky with Madja, and really quite unlucky that Will Grigg hasn't panned out, because we were all, including myself, I was really quite pleased that we've got Grigg.
He seemed like the perfect replacement, didn't he?
So that's unfortunate, but other than that, I sort of, particularly the last one, we've sold players and then got people in like your De Box, it was quite obvious it was just anyone through the door type policy. So I'm hopeful, but obviously January's hard, and as you were saying there, you don't know who's running the club. So
it's I don't know if there's maybe a lack of leadership. If again, it's the operative word is if there is a lack of leadership, that implies perhaps a lack of transfer policy or a lack of ethos. And failing that, you obviously, as you said there, you're going to get the anyone through the door policy. You're going to get a De Bock and a Sterling in.
I could just see that happening again, sort of the last few days of the window. I could see, we've signed. De Bock just keeps coming to my mind, but like a Leeds player whose fans then tell us he's the worst player they've seen in the history.
That's it.
You could easily see that happening again, which is obviously I hope not. I hope we do make great signings, like your likes of Willis has obviously been a great signing, but apart from him, Dobson's done well, but like
Lynch on a free.
yeah, Lynch. But in January it's so much harder, and especially if we're going for people who are doing well in this league, why would they leave their club to come here?
The definitive kind of thing which would need to be said to all of these players, and it was one of the things that was mentioned when Donald was talking about recruitment. They have to be the right players. They have to know that coming into this football club, you're going to turn up, you're going to play in front of 30,000 people every single week. You have to be the right character. You have to come in here and know basically what the expectations are, and you know that our remit's promotion. Now, personally, I think if we don't get promoted this season, then, it's probably going to be bordering on somewhat of a disaster. But the expectations need to be set, and we need to make sure that these players are the right ones. When you've watched certain players, for example, on like the Netflix documentaries, your Steels, your Johnny Williams and things like that, they look like they just have not been able to cut the grade, and they've looked like they've hated coming into work. And you look at someone like Luke O'Nien, for example, who's always got a smile on his face, and even when it's been really, really tough, he's never shied away from any sort of, kind of press things, and he's been on videos, and he's always taking photos for fans. So what I'd be looking at is a similar ilk. We need somebody who's basically going to come in and grab this opportunity to go, right, next season I'm going to be a championship player with this football club. So I think that in terms of what we're looking for, I imagine it might end up with freebies or loans, but by God, they have to be the right ones. I mean, I look at Lewis Morgan last season, for example, when he came in, I thought he was quite good. I could never quite get my head around why he couldn't last beyond 60 minutes. Maybe that's just the Glasgow diet that he's had up there, But
Too much, I guess.
Yeah, but for a young kid, he never really looks that sort of fit. Do you know what I mean? No. But he was a good signing. I would say he was one of the better signings. But we need to do our homework, and we need to make sure that the characters we bring in are definitely the right ones.
One thing I thought with the signings we made last season, I think the mistake we made like towards the end of this, if you looked at the average age of the squad, it was a lot older than the teams that won promotion. I think with because that playoff final we lost to Charlton, when you looked at the average age of their team, I think they had like young, energetic players that could like keep going in the latter stages of games, whilst we were banking on experience to get us over the line, which I think we need to, the recruitment policy needs to get this spot on in this window. We need a balance, like someone like potentially, I think, similar to when we brought Lynch on a free in the summer, someone like that, but we will need young players as well to maintain good energy levels in the team.
You know who we could go for, Alex? And I know you've mentioned him 100 times.
Go on.
Bright Enabakare.
Bright Enabakare. Honestly, I mean, I think Coventry are definitely the favourites there, but Wright will have Bright Enabakare.
He's just basically exactly what you need. Tall, physical, runs at people fast.
Yeah.
Caused just an absolute nightmare at the stadium like last season, didn't he?
Absolutely.
What about Ethan Robson, though, coming back? Is Ethan Robson likely to feature as much, do you think? Because the interesting thing was yesterday, Parkinson said he's recalled, but a lot of other teams are looking at him. Now that's
an interesting choice of words.
He's only got a couple of months left on his contract, so is it the case we go, right, we're going to maybe get a tiny fee for him, or is now last chance saloon? Is he going to be involved? What do you expect?
I don't know. The Grimsby fans seem to like him, but obviously League Two is a lower standard. I don't know. A part of me, I would like to see as many youth players involved as possible, but again, it has to be brutally only if they're good enough to get us promoted. And I don't know if he is, but that's purely because I don't
He's
know.
never had the chance, really, has he?
I don't feel like he has, to be honest. So I don't know. It was funny because he said there are other clubs looking at him as well. Now, if you're reading between the lines, that kind of implies he's looking to offload him. Yeah. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. I'd like to see him, but obviously, if he isn't good enough, then we can't really take the chance. But perhaps he should have had a chance prior to this stage in our season. But I suppose hindsight's a wonderful thing. Anyway, I think that's probably a good place to leave it for today. So our final little part of the segment, let's have our predictions for the Wycombe game. I'll go around the table, give me your scoreline, give me your goal scorers, and any other little miscellaneous facts about the game that you can think of off the top of your head. Start with you, Sam.
I think we touched on it earlier, it's going to be a physical game, and I think when we were saying it's not big-headed of us to say position by position we've got a more talented player.
That's factual.
So I think what you're seeing there is quite frankly, if we match them in terms of fitness, physicality and desire, we should be beating them really on talent. So hopefully Parkinson can get the players up for it. They looked very up for it against Lincoln. They should be even more up for it against top of the league. There'll be no pushovers. Wycombe will be coming here very confident. In terms of scoreline, you've got to just think it's going to be a horrible game to watch, really, with either a 1-1 or a 2-1. But I'm going to go positive, and I'm going to go 2-1 Sunderland. I think we'll go 1-0 down early on, but I do think we'll bounce back. I think the fans, like you were saying earlier, we saw against Burton, will really, really try and get behind us, and I think we'll respond, and I think we'll nick a few goals. I think Gooch will score. He's got to be full of confidence going into the game. And I think Wyke will score from a corner as well. Not a very good goal, but I'll celebrate it nonetheless.
Fair enough. Jacob, you're up.
Yeah, obviously in terms of quality, it'll be very different next week. I don't think it'll be necessarily an entertaining game to watch because of what they will want to bring. I think they'll have like a compact style. They'll take a point any day coming to us knowing that the form we're in at this moment in time. So I'm going to say I'll go for a 1-0 Sunderland win. I think Gucci, all aboard the Gucci gang, he will get the goal. I think it will be a Charlie Wyke flick on. He'll run onto space in the box, and I think similar to his third one yesterday, he'll slide it into the corner. And I think the second half, like the game will die down. We'll look comfortable at the back. That will deal well with a lot of long balls, and I think we'll see the game out. But I'll happily take that right now.
Craig?
I think next week is going to have elements of that Portsmouth playoff first leg at the Stadium of Light last season.
Yeah.
I think yesterday was a bit of a turning point, and don't get me wrong, right? I am as miserable as sin about football. I always maybe look at negatives, but I think what we've seen with the crowd, and you know, sometimes when you're looking at the atmosphere and you're hearing like kind of songs about Newcastle to get people going, we haven't had that for a good few days now. It's a good few games. Sorry, it's all been pro Sunderland. And there was no dissent or there was no mourns or anything like that. And I think we're going to bring that into next week. And I think we're now in a position where everyone realises to go like, look, we win this game, that is sending a statement out to the rest of the league. Because if you noticed on like Sky yesterday, they were like, oh, Sunderland's promotion push is continuing. So it's even like the news, channels are actually starting to believe it's on again. So I think if we have that, then yeah, I think we're going to basically take it to them. I don't think Wycombe will bring many fans, certainly not much as yesterday, but look, Lincoln brought 3,500 and they didn't change the game at all. No, and away followings can sometimes have a big factor of how the game goes. I think
they were loud until the first goal went in.
Basically, yeah. And then we're out of them, and then they realised the place again. Yeah. I think that will be a really, really ugly game. I think there'll be lots of kind of close calls in terms of I think we'll be at each other's throats. I think it'll probably be stop-start for a while. I think there'll be yellow cards. It wouldn't surprise me to see if at least one team finished with 10 men. Yeah. I'd like a decision to perhaps go our way for a change. I'd love to see somebody get sent off for an opposition team for something daft. But no, I believe it or not, I actually have a little bit of confidence. I do think we're going to win. I think we're going to win 1-0. And based on comparing the Portsmouth game, I'm going to go with Chris Maguire to score the winner. I think the only downside really about this particular game is I wish it would have been played on a night. Maybe I know we've got a Friday night game against Doncaster. I wish this was the Friday night game this week. Start the weekend, set out a big statement to go, you know what, we've gone away for a couple of months and everyone's went Sunderland are shite. We're better than Sunderland. We should be beating teams like Sunderland, but just basically remember that we're still the best team in this league. Even despite how terrible we've been, we're still in close contention for it. I do think it'll be the ugliest game we've seen all season, but I'm confident for a 1-0 win. Yeah.
Well, I think to give my own, I fully agree with yours. I fully agree with the former three, really. All things considered, I think we're very, very fortunate to have the games the way they are. I mean, we've enjoyed a lot of successful results recently. We've just seen a 3-1 win the week before. So I think the fans will be very much up for seeing another win against Wycombe. I think the fans will be behind them from the off. I think we'll be resolute. I think if we're able to keep the same formation and to keep in the same setup, then I think consistency will be key. I think we'll look very solid, but we'll be able to match them in aggression and in sort of arrogance while having more quality. And I think for me, that's going to result in a 1-0 win. Bit ugly, as you say. There'll probably be one person sent off. potentially two. There'll be at least one scrap.
It's going to be Ozturk, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just hope it's not Maguire. Like, I just have a sickening feeling like the occasion will get to him.
No,
that's why we need that Portsmouth replication,
Yeah.
don't we? Where he's getting under people's skin.
he's quite good to get himself out of it though. Like when he Tom Naylor, didn't he? When he got to hold the ball off him. Yeah. I think Maguire I think is good at drawing it out, but he never seems to get actually caught in the headlights himself. But I think, I don't know. Here's my prediction. I think we're going to win 1-0 and both teams will finish with 10 men. I think we'll get Ozturk sent off for something stupid. And I think they'll get, I don't even know, to be honest with you, I don't even know who they
Insert Wycombe player here.
Yeah, insert Wycombe player who's been sent off before in here to support my statement. But yeah, I think we'll win 1-0. I think we'll score a really scrappy goal from like a really scrappy set piece. I think it'll be someone like
Flanagan
will tap it over the line, yeah. 1-0, Flanagan will be fairly in control. It'll be a tight game. Ozturk gets on for something stupid with 85 minutes on the clock. And then we'll have
the next
a really nervy 5 minutes plus 12 added time. So, that'll be how it goes. Anyway, that'll wrap us up nicely for today. Thank you very much once again for listening to the ROKER Report podcast. Thank you, Sunderland Uni, for once again providing your studio for us to record in. Thank you to my guests who've come in. Thank you, Craig and Sam.
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah, and thank you, Jacob of SAFC Fan TV.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in. Don't forget to check out SFC Fan TV on their social media themselves. They provide a different dimension to the cover we provide. They have video reactions after the games. They have a Sunday panel and so much more. It is another good outlet for all things Sunderland. Don't forget to check them out too. Thank you again. Thank you, and farewell.